terms of our scripture for today, it comes from the Gospel of St. John, the 11th chapter, beginning with verse 17. And I'm going to be reading from Eugene Peterson's translation entitled The Message. And as I prepare to read, I want to encourage those of you, whether you're watching by way of our website, by way of Facebook, or by way of YouTube, be on the lookout for announcements that we're going to be making, because there may be some added times that we might be adding in terms of worship on Sunday. You can still be at your home, but you might be able to catch it at a different hour. So be on the lookout for that, as well as some other things that we're going to be doing by way of technology. John chapter 11, beginning at verse 17, the word of the Lord is as follows. When Jesus finally got there, he found Lazarus already 4 days dead. Bethany was near Jerusalem, only a couple of miles away, and many of the Jews were visiting Martha and Mary, sympathizing with them over their brother. Martha heard Jesus was coming and went out to meet him. Mary remained in the house. Martha said, "Master, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask God, he will give you." Jesus replied, "Your brother will be raised up." Martha replied, "I know that he will be raised up in the resurrection at the end time." "You don't have to wait for the end. I am right now resurrection and life," Jesus says. "The one who believes in me, even though he or she dies, will live. And everyone who lives believing in me does not ultimately die at all. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Master. All along I have believed that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who comes into the world." After saying this, she went to her sister, Mary, and whispered in her ear, "The teacher is here and is asking for you." The moment she heard that, she jumped up and ran out to him. Jesus had not entered the town, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When her sympathizing Jewish friends saw Mary run off, they followed her, thinking she was on her way to the tomb to weep there. Mary came to where Jesus was waiting and fell at his feet, saying, "Master, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her sobbing and the Jews with her sobbing, a deep anger welled up within him. He said, "Where did you put him?" "Master, come and see," they said. Now Jesus wept. The Jews said, "Look how deeply he loved him." Others among them said, "Well, if he loved him so much, why didn't he do something to help to keep him from dying? After all, he opened the eyes of a blind man." Thus far, the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now Jesus wept. The Jews said, "Look how deeply he loved him so much." Others among them said, "Well, if he loved him so much, why didn't he do something to keep him from dying? After all, he opened the eyes of a blind man." I want to deal with today the Jesus I don't like or understand. It's been my privilege to know the Lord for 49 years of my 56 years of living, to preach for the Lord for 39 years, and to pastor his people for 33 years, with the last 30 being here at the Park Church. I love the Lord, and I love him because he first loved me. He loved me unconditionally, everlastingly, individually. He's loved me uniquely and purely and abundantly and unreservedly. I revel in who the Lord is. He is altogether lovely. He is wonderful. He is marvelous. He is mighty. He is faithful. He is kind, he is patient, he is generous, he is good, he is righteous, he is just, and he is merciful. I can say without a doubt that the Lord is the best thing that ever happened to me, that he is the author and finisher of my faith, that he is the center of my joy, that he is all that and a bag of chips. I believe I'm not by myself when I talk about who the Lord is and how the Lord is, how his grace is amazing, how his power is without rival, how there is no searching of his understanding. There are those who can testify he's done some amazing things in your life. Who you are, he has made you, and what you have, he has given you, and where you are, he has taken you. He is that kind of God. And we love him from the depths of our heart. Somebody will say, I love him from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. And yet I must admit that while all of that is true, I have to make a confession that I haven't always liked the Lord. I love him, I love him, I love him, but there have been times in my life when I have not always been feeling the Lord. Yes, I'm saved to the bone, and as Bishop Thomas would say, sanctified to the marrow. I've got an anointing on my life. I've got a title over my head. I'm wearing a cross around my neck, and I will admit to you, yes, I love the Lord, but there have been times and seasons in my life where I have not liked the Lord. Unless you take a gasp and fall out at that statement, if you are listening to me critically, you will understand that no sustainable, long-term, loving relationship is without times where the person that you love is also the person that you don't like. You can't have a long-term, loving relationship and not have times when the person that you love is also the person that you don't like. Children can bear witness that the parents that you love are oftentimes the parents that you don't like. You mutter, you mumble under your breath that you can't stand them and that you wish that they were dead. And there are parents who can testify that those children whom you absolutely love, around whom you really orient your life, can oftentimes be children you don't like. There are spouses who can co-sign. You stood at the altar with gleamy, glistening eyes and said, I do. And you love your spouse. They're your boo. They're your honey bun. They got whip appeal and all of that. And while that is true, the spouse that you love, the husband that you love, the wife that you love can sometimes be the spouse that you don't like. The maturity of any relationship is still loving in the midst of not liking. And I will confess to you that the challenge for me has been not just to love the Lord when I don't like him, but to still serve the Lord when I don't like him. The challenge has been to remain faithful and faith-filled when I'm not feeling the Lord at all. And the times that I'm not feeling the Lord or not necessarily liking the Lord are not due to a deficiency in the Lord. There's nothing about the attributes of God that are unlikable or unpleasant. He's always lovely, always kind, always gracious, always merciful, always just, always mighty. And that's the part of the tension for me. Because it's what I know about the Lord. It's what I know about the power of the Lord that raises some issues for me. Because there are times when I know what the Lord could have done, and he didn't do. What I haven't liked about the Lord is stuff that he could have done that he did not do. That there are experiences that he could have kept from coming my way that he did not prevent. That there were things that he could have made happen that he didn't, while letting some other things that I didn't want to happen, let them happen anyway. As I stand before you, I know that I'm not by myself, because there are those of you who could put an amen into not liking the fact that you know the Lord. You know the power of the Lord. You've seen what God can do, and yet you wonder why he chooses not to do certain things in your life. Why he chooses not to keep you from certain pains and heartaches and disappointments and problems and perplexities. Why he chooses not to fulfill certain desires that you deeply and desperately have, while allowing what you fear to still come your way. Yeah, that's the Jesus I don't necessarily like or understand. Why does he allow some to conceive by accident outside of marriage, while those who are in marriage can't conceive on purpose? Why does he heal the heathen's child and let the believer's child die? Why does he bless a marginal person's business and let the tither's business go bankrupt? Why does he let Helion's dysfunction stay secret and your one mistake go on blast? Why does the liar get rewarded and you, the truth teller, you get punished? You see, when you know that God is sovereign, you know that it's not a matter of what God can't do. It's a matter of what he chooses not to do. And when that happens, when you find that going on in your life or the life of somebody that you love, questions start rising up in your mind. Who is the Lord that he would choose not to do something for those who've been faithful to him? What's the nature of the love of God that God chooses not to do what the faithful know that he can do? What type of love chooses not to prevent what could be prevented and chooses not to provide what could easily be provided by a God who is omniscient? That's what's at play in the text before us. The background is that Jesus is moving on his way crossward towards Jerusalem. And he receives a message from two dear friends, Mary and Martha, about their brother Lazarus. The email reads, "The one that you love so very much is sick." The underlying request is that Jesus would come and heal Lazarus. Now, they don't come out and say that, but when you have a relationship with the Lord that is intimate, you and the Lord have shorthand language. You can say the one that you love is sick, and he really knows that what you're really saying is, I need you to come and help us out. It was a reasonable request on several levels. The first level, why it was reasonable, is because they had a relationship with Jesus. These were dear friends of Jesus. And from them, Jesus had a place to lay his head. From them, he had an environment of comfort where he could just be who he is. From them, he could stop by unannounced, as he did in the Gospel of Luke, and be welcomed in to their home. It stands to reason that they could make this request because they were not strangers. They were in intimate fellowship with Jesus. Another reason why it seems to be a reasonable request is that Jesus has healed other people, and he's healed them in a variety of ways. There have been times when he has touched people and he has healed them. There was a time when he didn't touch anybody, but a woman touched the hem of his garment, and she got her healing. There was another time when a nobleman came to Jesus for a servant who was miles away, and Jesus, right from where he was, spoke a word of healing, and by the time that the nobleman got home, the servant was healed. It stands to reason that Jesus could certainly heal sick Lazarus because he has a reputation for doing so. They have a relationship with Jesus. Jesus has the reputation for healing. The third reason why it was reasonable is that where they were was along the route he was headed. Jesus was on his way to Bethany. They aren't asking Jesus to redirect his travels. They aren't asking Jesus to go in a direction that is opposite of where he was headed. They're asking Jesus, Jesus, since you're coming this way and Lazarus is sick, can you put a little acceleration on your donkey and get here sooner and heal? We really don't care how you heal him. You can speak a word where you are and heal him. You can come and heal him. You can entrust your disciples with some of your power and heal him. All that we want is for you to heal our brother. That's their expectation. It was reasonable. They had a relationship. It was reasonable. Jesus had the power. It was reasonable. He was coming in their direction. And yet, while all of those three are true, Jesus remains where he is. He doesn't send a word. He doesn't send any disciples. He remains right where he is. And as he remains right where he is, does not speak a word of healing, does not send disciples, does not accelerate, Lazarus dies. They bury Lazarus in the family crypt. There's no Jesus. There's no word from Jesus, no representative of Jesus, no telegram from Jesus, no email, no tweet, no post, nothing from Jesus. And the text tells us that when Jesus does show up, Lazarus has been buried for 4 days. At the sight of Jesus in the distance, Martha runs to Jesus and says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. At the sight of Jesus, Martha asserts what she knew about Jesus. She knew Jesus to be a healer. She knew Jesus to have power over sickness. She knew that Jesus was coming in their direction. She knew that Jesus cared about Lazarus. And based upon what she knew about Jesus, things could have been and should have been different. Lazarus should not be dead. She should not be grieving over the loss of her brother. They should not be having this conversation. This should not have happened. This should not be happening right now. Martha loved Jesus. But right now, she doesn't understand Jesus. And in this text, she's not the only one. Mary would ask the same question. And their questions were followed by the questions of others who were with them. There were other folk. When it says the Jews, this means those that did not believe in Jesus but knew Mary and Martha believed in Jesus. These were those skeptics who had a relationship with Mary and Martha, but they didn't have a relationship with Jesus. They were the ones who would stay at home while Mary and Martha would go wherever Jesus was and listen to Jesus. And maybe when Mary, Martha, and Lazarus would come back from hearing Jesus and they would tell these people about them, they would just ignore what they have to say. And now here they are on the periphery. They see Mary and Martha grieving. They see Lazarus dead, and they see Jesus showing up 4 days after Lazarus has been buried. And now they're going to chime in also. The Jews said, look how deeply he loved him. When they hear Jesus, when they see Jesus wept. And then others among them said, well, if he loved him so much, why didn't he do something to keep him from dying? After all, he opened the eyes of the blind. These people around Mary and Martha are chiming in on what Mary and Martha are thinking privately. Jesus had power. He opened the eyes of the blind. He raised an enemy's daughter from the dead in her bedroom and a stranger's son from the dead on the way to the cemetery. And with Mary and Martha and Lazarus' love for Jesus and supposedly Jesus' love for them, couldn't Jesus have done something more than just show up 4 days after the funeral and burial? To the reasonable person, it would stand to reason that if Jesus, what he did for strangers or even enemies in the case of Jairus, certainly Jesus would do as much, if not more, for his friends. Who is Jesus that he presumably does less for those who serve him well? Who is this Jesus who does less for those who have sacrificed what they've sacrificed, served the way that they've served, given what they've given, and done what they've done? Who's this Jesus who heals strangers and enemies, relatives, and lets his followers, brother, die? Who's this Jesus who heals others but not you or yours? Right now in Louisiana, I believe it's in the city of Baton Rouge, the first fatality of the coronavirus in that city is a preacher. And no doubt, that pastor's family is asking the question, couldn't Jesus have done something more for one who served him with such faithfulness? Couldn't Jesus have done more? Let's make it simpler. If Jesus doesn't do more for those who love him, certainly he could do as much. Certainly Jesus could do as much as he did for Jairus and the widow of Nain. I ain't asking him to do more, but I certainly am not asking Jesus to do less. Certainly Jesus could do as much. What is it about the love of God that prompts him to seemingly do less for those who love him? What should I understand about this God that I love and who loves me? That there are times in life when it seems like he does less for me than he does for those who aren't even in relationship with him. What should I know? What should I know? What should I get about this Jesus? Well, the text helps us out. The text lets us know, first of all, what I should get about this is that God's love and care are not predicated on what God prevents. With Mary and Martha seeking Jesus to exercise power to stop Lazarus' illness, to arrest the disease, to keep the virus from getting worse, they were looking for the prevention of death, pain, and suffering. Instead, Jesus stays where he is and allows it to get worse. It doesn't abate. It doesn't turn around. It gets as bad as it can possibly go. And I got to admit to you that's something that I just don't always understand. And I don't believe that I'm by myself, because we often approach God with prevention in mind. Prevent the hurt, prevent the suffering, prevent the pain, prevent the distance, prevent the divorce, prevent the diagnosis, prevent the disease, prevent the death, prevent the layoff, prevent the firing, prevent the breakup, prevent the breakdown. And we honestly and earnestly go to God. We put oil in every place that we know how. We gather others to go to God in prayer for us, all so that God will prevent some things. And isn't it wonderful when God shows up in prevention power? Isn't it wonderful when God breaks the fever? Isn't it wonderful when what they saw on the first time that they took the film, they don't find anymore on the second time? Yes, we feel most loved by God in those instances when God prevents. But what happens What happens when the Lord doesn't intervene in a preventive way? What happens? What happens when what was first seen on the film didn't disappear, but it spread? What happens? What happens when the fever does not break, but it increases? What happens? What happens when the frayed aspects of the relationship, they don't strengthen, but they break all together? Where is the love of God in the midst of that hurt, in the midst of that suffering, in the midst of that pain? Where is the love of God in that divorce? Where is the love of God in that layoff? Where is the love of God? What the text seeks to teach us is that God's love is not limited to what God prevents. That God's love is present also in what God allows. That God loves us in the midst of what he allows to come our way. That there is nothing that separates us from his love. That famine, persecution, distress, none of that separates us from the love of God. Height nor depth nor anything else is able to separate us from the love of God. Peril or sword, nothing is able to separate us from the love of God. God loves us in the midst of all of that. And here is a corrective lens, because so very often we believe that for something to be God, it must be in what God prevents. It must be in what God stops. It must be in what God turns around. We go to God, we look for God, and we name God's activity and what God curbs and what God forestalls and what God preempts. But the text reveals Jesus not preventing Lazarus from dying. What that teaches me is to not judge God's presence, God's power, God's virtue, God's value, God's love for me by what God prevents. That a relationship with God is more than trouble prevention insurance. It's more than mayhem, because the boys, the Hebrew boys, they weren't kept from the fire. And Daniel wasn't kept from the den. And Job wasn't kept from loss. And Jesus wasn't kept from Calvary. And the apostles would not be kept from being beheaded or crucified. That Martin and Malcolm and Medgar weren't kept from assassination. That little girls in Birmingham weren't kept from being bombed in jail. And there are those who say, you ain't got to go all the way back there. I can talk about what I haven't been kept from. I'm talking to some people whose children were not kept, my God, from dying, whose marriages were not kept from divorce, my God, whose bodies were not kept from healing, whose loved ones were not kept from death. But God still loved you. God still loved you. God still loved you in the midst of what you have not been kept from and what God allows. God still loves you. And that's the second thing. The love, the care, and the power of God are seen in how God sustains us in what God does not prevent. As devastating a blow as that was for them and to them, Mary and Martha are alive now in day 5 after Lazarus' burial. They didn't die with Lazarus' death. They didn't die subsequent to Lazarus' death. The pain and grief that they felt are due to the fact that they were alive to feel it. They were alive to miss Lazarus. They were alive to mourn Lazarus. They were alive to question Jesus about Lazarus. It may have felt like they would die, but they did not die. God sustained them in the midst. They made it through the first 4 days before Jesus shows up. And friends, as painful as life may get, as painful as your life may be right now, as unfair and as unreasonable as it may feel, please please know that the love and care and power of God are demonstrated in God sustaining you in the midst of what God has not kept you from. You are alive to grieve. You are alive to mourn. You are alive to cry. You are alive to question. You are alive. Where you are alive to be shut in and quarantined. God is keeping you. Somebody right now, you're hurt but alive. You're disappointed but alive. You're separated but alive. You're divorced but alive. You're laid off but alive. You're isolated but alive. You're laid up but alive. Financially challenged but alive. God has given you the testimony. You woke up the next day, the day after that, the week after that, the month after that, and there are some who can testify, I am alive years after what God did not prevent. God has demonstrated his love and his power just by sustaining you, by keeping you, by maintaining you, by getting you up out of the bed every day, causing you to take a shower every day, know your name every day, be able to function every day. Martha and Mary are sustained in the midst of Jesus' delay. And here comes Jesus, day 5 after the burial. Lord have mercy. There's something about that. There's something about that. Lazarus had been dead and buried 4 days before Jesus shows up, which leads me to believe it might be day 5. Why does that get you happy? Because 5 is the number of grace. Lord have mercy. My God, my God. God keeps us alive long enough for us to see him come with grace. I wonder, is there somebody right now where you are, my God, whether you got PJs on or you got your church clothes on, is there anybody where you are who can testify God has kept you alive long enough for you to see his gracious presence? He's kept you alive long enough for you to know that God is still gracious to you. You're able to say, through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought you safe thus far, and grace will lead you on. Here comes Jesus on day 5. And can I make a prophetic pronouncement to you? Day 5 will come your way, a time of grace, a time of unmerited favor. Day 5 will come your way when Jesus shows up, because that's something else the Lord wants us to understand, and that is the love and care and power of God are seen in God's presence in what we don't understand. Look at it now. Jesus shows up, and both Martha and Mary make the statement, if you had been here. Now, Jesus is there, but their statement is, if you had been here. Notice, Jesus is there, but their statement is, if you had been. I know that you're here now. Their issue is with the timing of Jesus' showing up. That Jesus didn't show up earlier. They bemoan his lack of presence earlier. Now, with Jesus with them now, here's what they're saying to him. I don't know where you've been, but you weren't here. Because if you had been here earlier, we wouldn't be here right now. We are here right now because you weren't here back then. You didn't send word here back then, and your coming here now is a little late. Has there ever been a time in your life when the Lord showed up, but it was a little late? And in your mind, you wouldn't be where you are if the Lord had showed up where you were. Yes. And that's where Mary and Martha are. They are where they are now because the Lord didn't show up where they were. And therefore, now in their minds, they're saying, you're a little late. Lazarus is dead now. He's buried now. He's been in the grave for 4 days, and everybody knows that the soul has departed from the body. You went to Jairus' house. You sent a word to the nobleman's house. You stopped a funeral procession in Nain, my God, and you didn't even know that lady. Why show up now when you could have shown up earlier? Why show up now when earlier you could have made a difference? My God, why show up now when the marriage is over? Why not show up when the marriage was on life support? Why show up now when the child is in jail, when you could have shown up when they were just acting foolish? Why show up now, my God, when I just had a sniffle? My God, why? But now I got full-blown coronavirus. Why show up now? What's the use after it has crumbled? What's the use after they're gone? What's the use after things have failed? And they fail to appreciate that Jesus is with them now. Wanting him back then, not appreciating that he's with them now. He is present now. He's present to see them. He's present to be questioned by them. He's present to feel their doubts. He's present to absorb their grief. Friends, what I've had to come to terms with is, even though I was looking for him back then, I have to appreciate that he's with me right now. And that the Lord is present to listen to what you don't get. He's present to hear you say, I don't get what happened. I don't get the miscarriage. I don't get the stillbirth. I don't get not being able to conceive. I don't get the separation. I don't get my marriage not working. I don't get them walking out. I don't get my child not being kept from the evil that was around him. I don't get my cancer not being in remission. I don't get my spouse dying. I don't get my parent not recovering. I don't get it. But the good news is he is present to hear whatever you don't get. He is present to feel what you don't get. And in the midst of this, there's something else that he offers that he wants us to really understand, and that his love, care, and power are in him offering himself as the answer to the mysterious and painful things that we don't get. Mary and Martha are saying, I don't get it. You here late. You could have been here earlier. Things could be different. Jesus hears their questions. And what he says to Martha is, your brother will rise again. And Martha responds, I know Scripture. I know what the Word says. I know he'll rise again at the last day. That wasn't what my prayer was about. My prayer wasn't about his rising at the last day. My prayer was you're keeping him from dying, so I wouldn't even have to deal with the fact that he would rise on the last day. She said, I believe in the doctrine. I know the Word. I go to Sabbath school. I know what the Word says. And then Jesus says, no. I'm the resurrection and the life. And he that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Do you believe this, Martha? I know you believe doctrine, but can you believe me? With Martha wrestling with the mystery of Jesus' delayed arrival and Lazarus' death and burial, Jesus says, I'm offering you who I am. I'm offering you a new understanding of who I am in the midst of the moment that you find yourself. Jesus does not give her an explanation why he took so long. He doesn't tell her that I stayed where I was some days, that I had conversations with the disciples. He does not even tell her what he told the disciples. He simply starts talking about who he is in a new way. He says, I'm not just what you called on me to be. You called on me to be prevention and healing, and I did not respond to your call for prevention and healing, because I'm more than prevention and healing. I'm also resurrection and life. I'm not just pre-death power. I'm also post-death death power. I'm not just somebody for you to trust in before something bad happens. I'm somebody for you to trust when something bad happens. I'm somebody for you to trust after something bad happens. I'm not just the one who keeps you from being knocked off the wall, but I am the one who, when you're knocked off the wall and the pieces fall asunder, I know where every piece is, and I'm the one who is able to put you back together again. I am the one who, even when it dies, I'm able to keep you and hold you and comfort you and carry you and console you, even when you did not feel that I was right there. Jesus offers himself to be enough for the mystery. He is more than an explanation. He is more than rationale. He is more, my God, than the answer to a problem. He is enough for the enigmatic. He is enough for the unreasonable. He is enough for what you don't get answers to. God is the God who says, I offer myself as the answer. When I don't tell you why, I show up and reveal who I am. That's what he did for Job. Job had a whole lot of questions, and his friends had a whole lot of accusations. And when God shows up, God does not speak to Job the way that he spoke to Satan in chapters 1 and 2. God does not talk about the conversation that went on, my God, in the heavenlies between God and the adversary. God does not talk about the fact that he gave, my God, the adversary permission. God does not talk about the fact that even though he gave permission, he drew a line in the sand. God does not talk about any of that when he shows up and talks to Job. But when God shows up in a whirlwind, he shows himself to be enough for Job in the midst of the mystery. He says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Where were you when I laid the corners thereof? Where were you when I put flight into birds and swimming into the fish of the sea? Tell me, do you know, my God, the lengths of the heaven? God said, I'm not going to necessarily answer why, Job, but I am going to show you who I am, and you're going to discover that I'm enough for your mystery. You will not get every answer to your question, but you'll get what you need in the midst of your questions. And who you need is to know who God is. Who you need is to know who Jesus is. And what the Lord is trying to teach us, what I've had to learn, is he says, let who I am be sufficient for what you don't understand. Let my being light be enough in the midst of your darkness. Let my being strength be enough in the midst of your weariness. Let my being the lifter up of your head be enough. And in this time of shutdown, in this time of shut in this time of quarantine, my God, God says, I am present to be enough. I'm the very present help in trouble. I'm the God who supply all your needs according to your riches in glory. I'll do more for you than a mask ever could. I will be the God who is enough. I wonder, is there somebody in your house? Can you just shout out, God will be enough? My God, even when the toilet paper grows thin, God will be enough. He is enough today. He'll be enough tomorrow. He'll be enough next week. He'll be enough next month. He'll be enough next year. Somebody can say, I discovered that he was enough after the disappointment. He was enough after I had to say goodbye. He was enough after they left. And he's been enough for the weeks and the months and the years. He has been enough. But there's one more thing, and I'll be out your way because I got a turkey waiting on me with some dressing. What you don't get presently, you will get later. The love and power of God, my God, that you can't understand right now can be fully understood in a day called after. Yes, with Mary and Martha and the people believing that it's too late, my God, and with Jesus asserting himself as resurrection and life, such that he's saying no time is too late for him. And so Jesus now is heading towards the graveyard. Do you see Mary and Martha and the people around, the curious and the skeptical? They're following Jesus to the graveyard. Everybody's believing that his relevance is over because the custom was that by the fourth day the soul has surely departed from the body, and therefore there is no chance of resuscitation. But Jesus did not call himself resuscitation. He called himself resurrection. Yes, there's always a difference. Words mean some things. Jesus says, I am the one who, when things can be absolutely dead with no possibility of life, I am the one who can resurrect. I'm the one who can bring it right there. I'm the one. He says, I've got something for y'all to see. Y'all just follow me and you're going to see it. His love and care and power are not limited by the tomb. He is resurrection and life, and with him there is a resurrection. Those who die believing in him, he is able to raise them up. In other words, what Jesus is saying is, I'm power over death. I'm victory over the grave. He told the disciples in verse 15, he says, this will give you another opportunity to believe in me. He's saying, one of the reasons why I'm allowing it to go as far as it's going to go is because you need another opportunity to believe in me. You saw me raise Jairus' daughter on the same day that she died. You saw me stop a funeral procession on the way to the cemetery. And so you believe me on the day of, and you believe me on the day before, or on the time before burial. But I'm going to allow it to get all the way to the grave, and I'm going to let it go for 4 days in the grave, because you need to have another opportunity to believe me. You need to know how far you can believe me. You need to know how deep you can believe me. You need to know how long you can believe me. And the thing that what the Lord is teaching me in this text is that I don't get to choose the moments of my increased understanding and revelation. I don't get to choose what the classroom is. I don't get to choose, my God, what the subject matter is. My God, but what God is telling us is that the mysteries of life will always supply an opportunity for you to get another understanding of who God is and what God is trying to tell all of us in the midst of this unprecedented event. As disruptive as it is, God is saying this is another opportunity to believe in him. The time that you don't get him, the time that you don't get what God is doing, is a time when you will get to know him in a different way. It's a time when you discover his sufficiency, when questions go unanswered, when pieces don't fit, when things don't make sense. It's in the time when it's not so much about what you knew about God, it's about what God is developing in you now. It's what God will show you now. It's what he will reveal now, because what God is telling all of us is you got another opportunity. I wonder if where you are in the safety of your house with people that you know, my God, don't have the virus, can you slap fire with them and say, I've got another opportunity? Yes. You've got another moment. You've got another chance. As dark, as dismal, as depressing, as disruptive, God is telling you, you've got another opportunity. Do you see Jesus now at the graveside? Lord have mercy. He says, show me right where you buried him. Show me where it's over. Show me where it's finished. Show me where it's done. Take me right there and see what I can do. Look at Jesus right there at that gravesite. He's calling Lazarus from the dead. And the Bible says that by the power of the sheer word of Jesus, Lazarus comes forth. It is there that Jesus says, I demonstrate my power and I reveal my glory by raising Lazarus from the dead. They experience the power of Jesus. They see the glory of God after Lazarus has died and been buried. My friends, what that tells you and me is that there is power and glory that God can reveal in the midst of this, and he can reveal it after this. He's able to demonstrate power to comfort and console, power to sustain, power to encourage, power to uphold, power to uplift, power to transform, power to transcend. What they did not understand before the grave, they understood after the resurrection. By God, what Job did not understand before he lost his children, before he lost his health, before his marriage went to pieces, he discovered after God showed up. And Job would say, I thought I knew you before, but I really know you now. What the disciples did not understand at Calvary, what they did not comprehend when Jesus was being buried, they came to understand with his resurrection. And I know that there's somebody right now listening to me. You can testify that with the Lord, what you did not get back then, my God, you get now. What you did not understand about him and his love, you understand it now. I can bear witness what I did not get, what I did not understand. I understand, first of all, that God has sustained me. I understand that God has been with me. I understand that God has been, I did not understand Stephanie Gorham's death. I did not understand Darlene McGuire's death. I did not understand my brother's death. I have not understood Joan Parrott's death. I have not understood a lot of people's death and dying, but I can testify, and those who love them can testify that the Lord has been with you. The Lord has sustained you. The Lord has kept you. And what you did not know then, you know now. You know God to be able to keep you when your life fell apart. You know God to be able to hold you in the midst of what was your worst day. You know God to be able to give you another day and another week and another month and another year. Somebody can hide, somebody can testify. The Lord has kept me. The Lord has made a way. The Lord has sustained me. And I've seen some resurrection. He resurrected joy, and he resurrected peace, and he resurrected my faith, and he's resurrected my trust. He's resurrected my worship. He's resurrected my praise. There are some who can testify, my God, I can't co-sign with the song, I never lost my praise. I lost my praise. I lost my worship. But God is a resurrection, and he gave me back my shout. He gave me back my dance. He gave me back my wave. He gave me back my praise. He gave me back my worship. And when I say I will bless the Lord at all times now, it's not a cliche. It is my very life, because I love the Lord even when I don't get him. I love the Lord even when I don't understand him. I love the Lord even when I may not like him. And it's my love for the Lord that gets me going. It's my love for the Lord that keeps me at it. It's my love for the Lord. And so when I say I love you, Jesus, I worship and adore you, I just want to tell you that I love you more than anything. It's coming from a depth of experience with you. I love you more than even understanding you. I love you more than even getting you. I love you more than even when things go right for me. I love you when it goes wrong. I love you when it goes left. I love you when I lose those that I really care about. I love you more than anything. Oh, hallelujah. I love you, Jesus.
I love you, Jesus.
Yes, 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 I worship.
I worship and adore.